Hello and welcome to Monday Mavericks and happy Labor Day. Thank you so
Happy
much for
Labor
being
Day.
here on your day off. Um, but what better way to spend it than watching videos for OCD Gamechangers? My name is Chrissy Hodges. I'm the executive director and founder of OCD Gamechangers, the nonprofit. I am the co-founder of OCD Peers, which is a group-based support practice to get peer support around OCD. And I also do one-on-one peer sessions worldwide. And I'm the author of Pure OCD, The Invisible Side of Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. And today, I'm so excited to have Miss Lisa Coyne with us
Hello.
to talk
Hello.
all things of why she's a badass. So, Lisa,
That was really
introduce
sweet.
yourself.
I'm very happy to be here. So I am a clinical psychologist who is, I'm someone who has worked with OCD since, I won't date it, but for a really long time, since my internship and postdoc at Brown, and I was the founder of the McLean OCD Institute for Children and Adolescents. And now I am their consultant, and I have my own set of clinics called the New England Center for OCD and Anxiety, which I founded with Phoebe Moore. And I do a lot of work with Dr. Evelyn Gould, who is in LA. So we are working on our LA branch too. So I don't know what else to say. Hello. It's nice to see you guys. Happy Labor Day.
Yes, yes.
You had a
And
nice weekend.
Thank you so much for being here. And Monday Mavericks is a series that we do through Game Changers because as you know, OCD Game Changers is really committed to elevating and giving a platform to people who are doing really creative, innovative work. What I really love about the OCD community and have just feel so passionate about is people that come into this community, whether they're treating it, advocating it, or doing peer support or whatever, they are seriously passionate about this community. They want to get help. They want people to get resources. And we felt like that we wanted to be a platform for people to feel safe and get their stuff out there to the world because we just need more advocacy. That's all.
Yeah.
So anyway, hi Tracy, thank you for being here. So yeah, we're just going to dive right in. First of all, I know we have a lot to talk about, things that you're passionate about, things that you've done in your career, and things that you're going to be doing here coming up soon, and possible collabs with peers, and we're going to make all kinds of good shit happen. But let's just start with this. How did you get into treating OCD?
So it's funny because when I did my graduate training, I worked with aggressive kids. That was my forte. And I did a lot of school consultation. I worked with really young kids and Head Starts. And I did my training. I'm from the Northeast, but I did my training in the Mississippi Delta at the University of Mississippi, which was a total cultural shift for me. But I learned a lot being down there about the South, about racism, about many things. So learning about anxiety and OCD was, like most people who are in grad school, a hole in my training. I didn't get it. And so when I went to Brown, I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Jennifer Freeman and Dr. Abby Garcia and the late Dr. Henrietta Leonard, who was my mentor in the pediatric anxiety research clinic. And it was funny because I went up there thinking like, oh, this is cool. This will fill a hole in my training. And then I'm going to go do like little kid work. And I just was so incredibly inspired by working with folks with OCD and their families. And at the time, it was the pediatric OCD treatment study, POTS Junior. So it was the multi-site trial with Duke, Penn, and Brown with kids from age 4 to 9. And I was one of their study therapists, and I was a recruitment coordinator. So my job was to kind of go out and treat people, but also to recruit people into the studies.
Wow.
And it was just such amazing work. And it was so inspiring. Like, I just felt like just watching kids face their fears, like you just learn so much about what strength is when you know folks with OCD and when you know kind of like when you watch them get through it. And it's really all about, ERP is all about helping people find their inherent strengths, which are there, So anyway, so that's how I got started in it. I just fell in love with it, and I stayed on for postdoc and continued to work there. And it's just great.
So I'm sure you agree with what I was saying. Like the people that get into this field, they are just so
Yes.
committed and
And I
passionate.
was, yeah, and I was thinking, it really is a community. Like it really does feel like a community in a way that like I'm not sure I fully experience in other like I don't know, areas of treatment or whatever.
Mhm.
It's like it just feels like people really care about each other and help each other
Mhm.
to the degree that they can. You know, even the clinicians, the clients, like most of the teens that we treat, like a lot of them go on to do advocacy work themselves. You know, because it means so much to them that it was so difficult and that they found their way through. They want to give back, which
Yeah,
that also inspires me. That's really cool.
I love that. That was exactly my experience, and I think because
Yeah.
it's so you feel so isolated and lonely.
Yeah,
It really is
I know.
this tugging of like I've got to do something. I don't want anyone else to suffer this way.
Yeah,
And so, decide, choosing to do advocacy and to speak out is just, well, I mean, we've already gone through exposure.
right.
So then, like, it's kind of like, let me just expose myself to put my story out there.
Yeah. And like you're someone who, like Chrissy, your work touches so many people because you do this and you do this advocacy. And like I am so grateful when I'm like, I have a question, I'll be like, go to YouTube. And I know there's a video on Chrissy's feed that I can show these kids. And I literally like it's great, you know. So I'm so grateful. And it's such a nice that's the other thing that I don't think you see um, maybe across different kinds of issues. Like I think that in this community, when you know folks with OCD, and OCD runs in my family too, you
Okay.
know, and I had postpartum OCD when I had my
Oh,
daughter. When I was in grad school, I had no
wow.
idea what it was,
Wow.
which was really, yeah. And I remember getting really down and really depressed. And I would have these horrible images of like I'm like, I don't want to think about it, of course, but no, we're going to think about it. Like of like bad, like her choking or her falling and crushing her skull, and I'd be driving to work because everything was like a million miles away from grad school. Is Mississippi, everything's so far, and I'd be driving to work to a Head Start, and I'd just about drive off the road when the images would flash up, and I had no idea what this
Yep.
was because
Hmm.
I didn't have specific training in OCD. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, but the collaboration between folks who have it and also, you know, clinicians and researchers, I think is profound. And it's one of the things that's helped us move forward in our
Hmm.
treatments, you know, and
Yeah.
keeping them, you know, current.
Well, yeah. And I think another thing I really like about this community, one thing I feel really embraced, when we were talking about like the
Yeah.
BFRB group earlier, is
Yeah.
just the importance of the lived experience voice. And I
Yes.
think that you don't get that in,
I
you don't
agree.
get that in straight up medical model.
Yeah.
And so I really I feel like I have a place and a voice in this community, even though I'm
Mm-hmm.
not a clinician.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of advocates feel that way. It's just so, and I think again, it just speaks to the passion that the therapists in this community have. It's less,
Hi,
way less.
Sean.
I know. Sean, Chinook, Chinook, Chinook. I
That is
got
a
it
really fun
right.
thing to say.
Chinook. I have so
Oh,
many
Sean, I should
videos.
be wearing your shirt. He made it. I just folded it. It was in the laundry. He made a really. So Sean is someone with lived experience, a brilliant graphic artist,
Mhm.
who made this really cool T-shirt with monsters on the bus, which is a metaphor we use sometimes for OCD. So it's nice
Yes,
to see him here. I should be wearing that shirt.
I
Wait,
know. Just so
I
you
was going to
know,
say
Sean,
something. What was it? It's gone out of my head. Oh well.
I just ordered a bunch of mugs and bags
I got the
yesterday,
mug. The
actually,
mug's
Sean.
awesome. So
Oh, and
it's
hi, Jasmine. Okay, so I want to pivot a little bit before we go to what your future endeavors are. I definitely want to talk about some of the things that you're passionate about
okay.
as a therapist, and especially in your the work that you did
Yeah.
in Mississippi. So I know just from being friends with you on
Mm,
Facebook
yeah.
that how passionate you are about the social justice issues. Just recently, our world has, kind of had an awakening, and
Yeah.
I know that it's also woken
Thank
up the
goodness.
OCD community to see that we don't have a lot of the cultural representation in therapists. We don't have a lot of the lived experience, people willing to come out and speak. Just so y'all know, we are going to have a a Black individual come and join us and talk about the issues, the cultural issues that come with mental health treatment. She's going to come on and be on our fireside chat in a few weeks.
Awesome.
I'm super excited. She's a good friend of mine. And so tell me a little bit. I don't really even know what the question is. Just tell me a little bit about that passion, and then what your
Right.
thoughts are around that in our community.
So, I have so many thoughts about this. And the first thing is to just acknowledge that everything I say is going to come from a very privileged and white perspective. And I totally own that. And I think that it's really, really important to speak humbly about this. So let me just say that, right? But that being said, I grew up in a pretty white suburb. I didn't understand what it meant to have a culture. I remember thinking that I was regular, whatever that was. I just no idea, no exposure at all. And then I went to the South for grad school, and I saw disparities, and I saw abject poverty, and I saw, it wasn't all sort of, it was much more complex than I had imagined, but there was a lot of racism down there. And there was a lot of, it was just people weren't aware that they were racist. And it was just really different. And I did not know that just because I was white, I would be looked at as someone who was ill intended, someone with bad intentions. And sometimes that happened. And there was a lot of distrust. And I was like, but wait, I don't like, what do you mean? And that's something that like we need to understand is that when we interact, it doesn't matter what your intentions are. We interact based on what we look like a lot, unless we're really kind of waking up and we're having these difficult conversations. So I was thinking, I knew you were going to ask this. And like, one of the things that I was trying to think, like, what was like a real aha moment for me? And there were a couple, and this was a big one. So I did grad school, and I took a job at the faculty of Suffolk University in their clinical psychology doctoral program, where I got tenure. And along the way, I had worked, all of my career, I'd worked with younger children in Head Starts, which is something, again, that I'm very passionate about, because Head Start works, most people know this, but like serves children 3 to 5. And what I saw in the South was that if these things were defunded, there would be, the whole communities would collapse. I mean, it was absolutely essential that there was a place for moms to bring their preschoolers and single families or whoever to bring their preschoolers so that they could have access to health care, access to medical care, socio-emotional like assessment, support, all of that, so that they could also go out and work. And just without this, there would be zero, nobody could afford childcare. That just wasn't available. And so when I came to Suffolk, I started doing the same kind of work, and I made sort of a consulting clinic to work in different Head Starts in, some of the Black neighborhoods, Latino neighborhoods, and in actually Chinatown, which was interesting. And I remember when I took the position, I was like, well, I know a lot about little kids, and I do not know anything about Chinese culture or Chinese Americans or what this particular community is like. And I think that it was important to me at that point to just kind of ethically say, this is beyond my competence, but I'm going to own that. And if you are okay with that, I will do everything I can to learn. And they said, yes, sure, come. And so I did formal like consultation, like what could I learn from this? And we ended up doing some pretty nice research there, where we adapted an evidence-based sort of Western parenting model to this community. And we called it parenting and grandparenting together, because we had to deal with issues like, the adults, like young adults would come over with their kids from China, and they would also bring their elderly parents. And the kids would work. So during the day, the grandparents would be watching the preschoolers. And when you're older, they were much more traditional in culture. And so, the dogs are barking. Hang on. Hi, Peaches. Can we? Sorry. This is just pretend. This is a thought that we're going to notice, and we're just going to keep going. Anyway, so we had to, so there was like a cultural difference between the generations, right? Where the little kids were being taught to be very independent per Western culture and Head Start. The grandparents were like doing everything for the kids. And when the poor adults, a lot of whom worked in like these difficult jobs in the food industry, would get home and they'd want the kids to sort of be obedient and have the family be harmonious, like the kids were running wild. And so you're like, oh boy. But they couldn't speak to their parents because when you are, the patriarch is the head of the family, right? And so you had all of these things happening, and we really had to adapt our approach, and we couldn't assume that what we knew was going to fit. So fast forward, I did a fellowship based on this work with the American Psychological Association called the Minority Fellowship Program. And it was in Washington. They sent us there. There were maybe 20 or so of us. Some real stars in the field. I'm so honored to know them. And we learned how to do research, how to write grants, how to do qualitative and quantitative mixed methods research. We learned how to lobby. We would go to the Hill and lobby. And we had presentations from folks at NIH. And I remember being there and learning, and like, this is all, this is like 10 years ago at this point, but, they talked about, one of the presentations was on mental health disparities across race.
Yeah.
And they said, so they described a study where they matched people who were Black or people who appeared Black and people who appeared white on every single thing, every single symptom, and they sent them into ERs just to see what happened.
Whoa.
And the only variable that was different was color of your skin. And what happened, not surprisingly, of course, was that people who were Black far less often got, the best treatment. So, and this is what happens. This is just one of the many things. And so all of this culminates to say, this is really important to me, because it's not okay with me if people who, by virtue of luck, nothing else, right, and the color of their skin, get better care than people of color or people who are sexual minorities or people in any marginalized group. And it's just not okay with me. And I don't know if that's like me and like the piece of like, I don't know if it's like a little bit of moral scrupulosity or what, but like, it's just not okay with me. And so just seeing, I guess, what I saw in my training and trying to like, and I notice it's like, just, there's an underrepresentation of people of color in studies about OCD. Yeah. There's an underrepresentation of people of color and sexual minorities in the field, in our field. Yeah. And there's, and if you're, and just thinking about this, like there's difficulty with access to care. There's of utilization of care, given sort of the stigma that you might have being a person of color. And then like talking about, I have this other thing going on too, when already you're not getting great care, you don't have access to care. You might live, there's a lot of research coming out now, like where there's a lot of stories in the media you might see talking about COVID and why there are much higher death rates in groups of color, Latinos, Indigenous people in the US, and people who are Black. And it's because, and it goes way back to sort of our beginning as a nation, right? When people had nothing, where it's harder for you to own property or get a mortgage compared to people who are white. Therefore, you might live in substandard housing or areas that are close to petrochemical plants and things like that, which increases your risk of asthma, hypertension, etc., which then makes you more susceptible to illness. And of course, on top of that, you don't have access to care. They're much more, and also, people of color are much more likely to have been essential, or to be essential workers, right? So they might have to have jobs, right, and be out working and are unable to keep themselves and their families safe. So it is something that really is very important to me, and I think it should be important to all of us, frankly. If we are humans, we are all in this together, and it's really not okay if you can see this. And I wonder if people are really aware of the depth of the disparities when you see that.
I don't think that people are, and I think that I think that it really, just to echo that, Lisa, even in growing up in the South, seeing racism
Where did you
firsthand
grow up?
in Georgia.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. So seeing it firsthand, living it, seeing it, watching it with my friends, but just seeing it as a teen,
right,
adolescent.
And let me say, it's in the North too. It's not just to be clear.
But growing up in the culture, I did not see anything other than through the lens of being white. And so even though I knew it was there, and even though it was hurtful, it just, like, I'm just going to say it, it was kind of like this attitude of, well, that's just the way it is. And it really wasn't until I started working in the system as a peer support specialist that I really understood the disparity. And that was when my eyes opened. And it was like, wait, what? Okay, like I knew it was there, but I didn't have to face it. You don't have to face it until you're working with people and you see the barriers right there in front of your face. And so I'm saying all this to say, I think people just don't know, Lisa, and I think that they don't want to know. If they don't want to know, and they don't have to know, if it's not bothering, if it's not a barrier for them, which is why it's baffling to me that people still believe that racism doesn't exist, when we actually have evidence to back it up.
Well, what I think one of the things that really brought it home to me was when my daughter was really small, and, and she had a best friend who is now, they're both in college now, one here and then one in California, Mills, but like her best friend was Black. And I remember after learning about disparities, I would look at the two of them, best friends, and they were so cute. Like they got put together in preschool by this teacher named Starla. And Starla had this rule where she would pair like 3 or 4 kids together. And if you needed something, the rule was, if you needed help, first you asked the other people in your group. And if you guys couldn't figure it out, then you come to the teacher. And it was hilarious because Micaiah was way taller than Josie. Josie was like a little tiny thing, but they had this thing where, like, if it was something on a high shelf, Micaiah would get it for Josie. But if it was like, my bead fell under the table and I can't reach it, Josie would sneak in there and be like the little one again. But I remember like looking at the two of them going like, yeah, and if they both got like an injury, a life-threatening injury, one of them would have a higher chance of surviving and the other would not. And I could not get that thought out of my head looking at the two of them. And it just broke my heart. It was awful. And I think, so like this is real. We need to do something about this, and we need to keep pushing to do something about this. I just heard today, or I read something in, I think the New York Times about how Trump is saying, it's not okay to do diversity training. What? Mm-hmm. And that, if schools in New York, if they're teaching the New York Times 1619 project, which is a revisioning of our history from the perspective of like actually talking about how we were founded based in slavery, right? Mm-hmm. And he's saying, well, I'm not going to fund schools. I mean, we have a problem. So I don't know if we're supposed to get political, but there you have it. I'm just going to but that is what being an anti-racist means. It means you know, and I think this is a very useful concept for folks who haven't read, you know, How to Be an Anti-Racist, which is a great book. It's not that you're racist or not racist, right? Because you can hear people walking around going, I'm not a racist. Well, that doesn't mean anything. To be an anti-racist means where you see disparities, you speak. Where you see unfairness or injustice, you stand up and you do something. That is what it means. So it's something that is a behavioral definition that you can do, right, in real time. So don't be quiet when you hear the racist joke. Call it out.
Right.
You know?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
I think the more
Oh my gosh.
education too that we can do, you know,
Yeah.
and just to pivot and segue a little, you know, this is one of the, you know, we are going to start some focus groups here at OCD Gamechangers, and one of the big focus groups is going to be the financial and cultural barriers, because this is something I know that so many people are passionate about for this very reason. And I think we feel like, you know, kind of our hands are tied on, you know, how do we, you look at something like a cultural barrier to treatment or even cultural barrier to awareness, and we go, I can't solve that because it's too huge. But if we do it with a bunch of people and we work on it together, I think that we can start bringing more awareness to this, start bringing people out who feel supported in other cultures to be able to talk about this stuff, because we need their voices. Like you were saying earlier, like, you know, you and I are very, very privileged. And so even in talking about this, it's important to acknowledge that. We need the voices of the people that are experiencing those disparities. So, you know, OCD Gamechangers will be coming out with those initiatives in the next couple days for therapists to join these focus groups. Yeah, really excited about it.
I'm so excited you're doing it.
This is, you know, if it takes us 2 years to solve it, it takes us 2 years, but we have to do it together, because that's the answers to all of the problems in our community are in the community. So we're going to do it together.
And we need to like make a space for people to speak. And that's the thing, is like for us to step back and push other people forward. You know what I mean? So I love that you're doing that. It's brilliant.
Yeah. So, well, we are going to wrap up here in a moment. First, I want to say, tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing with your groups, so people can know. Yeah.
Sure. So we're doing two things. We're doing one thing for teens with OCD, and we're doing one thing for clinicians who are learning ERP. And for teens, we are working on starting just a free support group on our Stuff That's Loud page. And, you know, we want to bring in people and just make sure, and we have teen mentors, or we have teen sort of teens who've been through treatment. So you have a lot of lived experience who will be helping, and then there'll be clinicians sitting in each group just to kind of like, in case there's questions and things like that. So that's one thing that we're working on, and we're hoping to roll that out sometime soon, actually, in the next couple of months. And then the other thing is, in our clinic, we teach an ERP foundations class and do consultation. And so we've just awarded our first 2 scholarships to that, to clinicians of color who work with, because this is the thing, like, again, we want to train other clinicians who are clinicians of color, clinicians who are in marginalized groups, who work with those populations, so that, you know, we can get that out there and train you where you need it. So
that's a barrier too.
That starts this week. So we're excited.
That's a barrier too for people of different cultures. They want to work with therapists that are in their culture.
Yes.
And so when we don't have the therapists there that are able to serve, you know, the different cultures, different countries, different languages, that's where we're losing people.
Exactly. I could not agree more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Tell me your website. Is it stuffthat'sloud.com?
Yes. So to find, it's www.stuffthat'sloud.com. And then we have our New England Center, which is just newenglandocd.org. And that's our clinic. And so you can kind of, I think they're linked, but they're not.
Does that look right?
Yeah, I like it. Perfect. Stuff That's Loud.
Banner.
And the banner was designed by the fabulous Sean Chinook. Thank you, Sean.
Chinook. Yes.
We're gonna gonna text him and be like, say your name for me. Can you
I
just call me
know.
say your name?
Listen, he's so sick of telling me how to say his name.
That's so
So,
funny.
but I think it's endearing at this point.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So that's great. And everybody keep an eye on the website, especially with the teen groups coming up. I hope that we can collaborate with OCD peers to do some
I hope so
community
too.
time and all that.
That would be
And
great.
last question would be, Lisa, if people are out there listening and they're like, wow, I just, really want to get involved. I want to start figuring out like how to be a person that's understanding disparity, or I want to start like getting involved in the OCD community. Give us some advice on what people could do.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think read. There's plenty of things out there that you can see. There is a very interesting Facebook group called if you happen to be white, called White People Doing Something.
Mm-hmm.
And the advocates who are running it. It was really interesting, like because I joined it up when George Floyd was murdered. And it was very small, and I haven't checked it recently, but it was like up above like something like 15 or 16,000 members.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a forum to ask questions, to learn. There are many resources posted, unpacking the backpack of white privilege, like, learning about white privilege and how you benefit from it if you are a white person, right? Mm-hmm. And acknowledging that. And I think, listen, most importantly, listen to people of color. Ask them for information. Hi, Molly, from Not Alone Notes. And get ready to learn, and get ready and be willing to be uncomfortable as you learn.
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to be uncomfortable, because we need to do this. We need to do this work. And I just think, I really hope that these are the generations now where we will move the needle on this. We need to see a change. And I would really like to see better healthcare for everybody where it's equal,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And sometimes I make the comparison for people when they are reluctant or just not wanting to buy into, I don't need to learn because I'm not privileged or racist. I sometimes make the comparison, and I know it doesn't compare at all for what Black folks deal with, but when you live with a mental illness, how important is it to be heard? How important is it to be believed? How important is it to feel like people are really listening and are willing to make a change on how they look at having a mental illness? Because it is the same in other cultures that are oppressed. And it's, as people in our community, I think that we have the advantage of understanding what it is like, to have something that other people aren't going to understand and we're going to be stigmatized for. So we're going to find a way to take that energy and we're going to change those cultural barriers here. And I know that we're going to do it together.
Amen. Amen, girl. You go for it. We're going to do this.
So Lisa, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to see you. It's so nice to talk about this stuff.
I know, and I really appreciate it. And OCD Gamechangers is committed, to representing different cultures and definitely to speak out about racism. I think we're just still learning how to do it. These are the conversations we need to start having. And then again, like having these focus groups coming up. So keep an eye on our OCD Gamechangers Facebook page. We're going to be posting in the next couple days. These first focus groups are just for therapists. Sorry, everyone. But we will in January. This is just kind of like our first round of quarterly focus groups. Starting in January, we will have other focus groups that are going to be opened up to people other than therapists. We just want to kind of feel it out and see how they work. But we're really excited about it. Excited that you'll join us. And I'm excited to collaborate with you.
Very excited. Same. Me too.
Thank you for being here, Lisa.
My pleasure.
We're so lucky to have you in our community. So appreciate everything you do.
You too. And thank you for all of the work that you do. This is so awesome.
Yeah, and thank you all of you who are here and commented. We did really get to comments. We were really in a great conversation, but thank you for being here as usual. Oh my gosh. And tomorrow, our young adults who we're calling OCD Gamechangers Z, or Generation Z.
Oh my God,
Actually,
that's
it's like
awesome.
a combination of Gen Z and millennials, so we call them zillennials. Anyway,
That's really funny. I love that.
make sure to keep an eye on our Game Changers page
Zillennials.
because
That's awesome.
tomorrow starts our first TikTok Tuesday.
Oh
And
my
thank
God.
goodness they're doing the TikToks and I'm not.
Oh my
But
God.
every
I'm gonna watch
Tuesday, we're
that.
going to have informational TikToks, about OCD topics that aren't talked about a lot. We're going to do a day in the life. This starts tomorrow. We're so excited. And thank you to all the young adults that are participating. And thank you to all who are here today. So we'll see you at TikTok Tuesday tomorrow. And then I will see you not this Friday, but next at our Fireside Friday. So thank you again, Lisa. Thank
Fantastic.
you to
My
everyone who
pleasure.
joined. And we will see you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your holiday.
You guys too. Take care. Bye, Chrissy.